I'm JP Tuesday.
And I'm Kiki Cannon. As lifelong Disney fans, the work of countless talented Disney creatives have shaped our lives.
Now, as the Disney catalog expands, we're taking a journey through film and television to discover if that spark that shaped us as children lives on in adulthood.
Does your favorite Disney media still cast that same spell? Join us as we find out. We are Rewatching the Magic.
Hi, Kiki.
Hi, my name is Kiki, and I have short-term memory loss.
Ah. Well, that works because we are talking about Finding Dory, the Finding Nemo sequel from 2016.
That's actually not a bit. That's why I wanted to talk about this movie. My name is Kiki, and I do have short-term memory loss. As Tuesday can attest.
Oh, the editing I do on this podcast.
Yeah, no, I mean, and I appreciate that. That's kind of weirdly an accessibility issue. The editing that you kindly do on this podcast to help hide some of my neurological symptoms. And I've never thanked you publicly, but thank you for that.
No problem.
So I personally, and we've been trying to find the right time to do it, I personally have been wanting to do Finding Dory for a while.
You actually suggested Finding Dory before we ever did Finding Nemo.
Yeah, we had to wait a while because we wanted to do Finding Nemo first, before getting into the sequel. But when I saw Finding Dory in the theater, I was incredibly moved at how great of a representation of this sort of disability, this sort of kind of neurological thing. My problems are different than what they present Dory with. Hers are very heightened so that children can understand it. I do have trouble remembering what I did yesterday.
There are times, we'll record something and like hours later or sometimes days later, you'll send me a text saying, I don't remember half of what we said yesterday.
Yeah, and it's true. The thing is that sometimes I have to keep notes on my life, when it's important things, like for medical purposes, because I won't remember. One of the things I asked my Amazon speaker, whose name I won't say because it'll trigger her, and maybe yours too if you're listening to this without headphones, is like simple questions like what day is today? Because I won't remember what day of the week it is. And she will kindly answer, today is day, month, date, year,
We just had a conversation off mic of how you forgot to take your meds.
Yeah, I do take a lot of medication. And the thing is that I'm, since we're talking about disability, earlier this year, as we're recording this, I had a bout with COVID, and that turned into long COVID, and that worsened my neurological symptoms. So I already had issues, and COVID made them worse.
And we're seeing that now with a lot of people who've had COVID and having memory issues and things like that. Yeah.
Yeah, so weirdly, I already wanted to do this movie. Like I said, this movie came out in 2016, and I have been talking about wanting to do this movie basically since we started the podcast. And then I got COVID, and things have gotten worse. You can attest to this. I mean,
Mhm.
I'm okay saying it. It has been really interesting watching it again after what COVID has done to my brain.
I will say that this movie really shows the fear surrounding this disability. Like in the first movie, it's kind of played up as a joke. And I believe we've talked about that when we talked about the first movie, but here it's treated very seriously, and it really shows how scary short-term memory loss can be. Especially if you're getting lost, if you're in the middle of a conversation and don't remember where you were going with something. Or, you know, you're trying to find your long lost parents and then forget all about them, as this movie portrays.
Well, the thing is that they show Dory in this as like she has short-term memory loss, but she has long-term memory loss too because she doesn't remember her parents. It's kind of two different things. With mine, I have like really strong memories of like my childhood and stuff in a lot of ways. I can tell you things that happened to me when I was like 4 or 5 years old. If you ask me what I ate for lunch yesterday, gets a little fuzzier. It is interesting that hers seems to be that she doesn't form short-term memories, and also she has trouble recalling long-term memories. They're buried in there somewhere, as we see in the movie, but she has trouble accessing them.
She needs a trigger. And this is something that is in the first movie. It could be a word, it could be an object, it could be a phrase. But once she hears the word or the phrase or sees the object, everything will rush back to her. And I like that they kept that in this movie.
Yeah, it is really good. Before we get too far into kind of dissecting the plot, I wanted to talk a little bit about why we're talking about this movie and why it's so personal to me. Um, but let's talk just a little bit more about the technical end, because you were telling me before that this is not the first choice of sequel.
Oh, yeah. Okay. So I've mentioned this before on the podcast in that early 2000s, about 2005, 2004, 2006, around there, uh, Disney and Pixar were not in a good place in their relationship. We've talked about the rocky relationship between Disney and Pixar during those early days, giving them unnatural crunch times, and how, like half of Toy Story 2 almost got deleted, and those stories. Specifically, there were issues between Michael Eisner, who was the president of Disney at the time, and Steve Jobs, who was the president of Pixar at the time. They did not get along at that point, and they were going to go their separate ways. Pixar was going to become an independent studio. But Disney owned all of the movies that Pixar had made up until that point. They owned the characters. So Eisner was pretty much saying, we don't need Pixar. We already have these characters. We're going to make our own sequels to these movies. And created a
With Blackjack and never mind.
Yeah.
Sorry, this is the episode the littles can listen to again. I gotta make sure I'm good.
So Eisner created Circle 7 Studios, and it was solely to create sequels to the Pixar movies. And they had 3 movies in the pipeline when they started. The original version of Toy Story 3, which we did talk about when we talked about the official's Toy Story 3. Go back to that episode if you're interested. Monsters Inc. 2, which we have not. I'll talk more about that when we get to Monsters University, whenever we get around to it. And Finding Nemo 2. The original concept of Finding Nemo 2 was very different than what we got here. It was the movie that was in production the least before Disney eventually just bought Pixar and shut down Circle 7 Studios and fired all the animators. That's a different story. But what we know about Finding Nemo 2 is that we were going to start with a flashback to that opening in the first movie, where Marlin and Coral's eggs were devoured, and the only surviving egg was Nemo. We would find out that a second egg survived, floated away, and ended up becoming adopted by another fish family. This fish would grow and become go by the name Remy. This was before Ratatouille was a thing. So eventually, Remy would find his family, find Marlin, find Nemo, and that would be the movie. This new dynamic of Nemo suddenly going from only child to having a twin brother, Marlin now having 2 children instead of 1, and this dynamic of jealousy, because, hey, Dad, you went all across the ocean looking for him. Why didn't you go looking for me? Eventually, this would culminate in the brothers and Dory teaming up to rescue Marlin, who had been captured and put in a aquatic zoo where he would be performing tricks. Because it's a clownfish. Yeah, the movie, again, the first draft script got leaked. It's out there if you're interested in the full story. But that's the general gist of what Finding Nemo 2 would have been. It might have been called Finding Marlin. I'm not sure. All we know is that it would have been called, at some point it was called Finding Nemo 2. And I say that, there's a lot in the idea of one of the characters getting captured and getting put in aquatic containment does kind of flow into this movie. Though Dory isn't doing any tricks. Intentionally, anyway.
Yeah, the septopus is the one doing that.
Yeah. So, yeah, and as I've said, Bob Iger becomes the CEO of Disney in 2006. Just straight up buys Pixar, Circle 7 Studios is shut down, and the original 3 movies that I had just talked about were shelved and never to see the light of day. And now by 10 years after that, we get this movie, Finding Dory, and I mentioned this at the end of the last episode, that there was a thought that went across several fan groups of Disney that do we really need a Dory movie? And really, the only one really campaigning for this movie to exist was Ellen DeGeneres, and I'm not lying about that. Anyone who watched Ellen's show at that time, after Finding Nemo 1 came out, she would kind of dedicate time on her show to kind of publicly campaign for a Finding Nemo 2, because she really enjoyed playing this character and wanted to continue playing this character. So when Finding Dory came out, it was like, oh, Ellen got her way. It's her movie. She's getting her movie. And it kind of isn't. I mean, it's Dory's movie, yes. But it's not an Ellen DeGeneres movie, if that makes sense to anyone.
Yeah, I would kind of agree with that. I think that this is very much a Dory-centered movie rather than an Ellen DeGeneres vehicle.
before we really get into it, one more time, Kiki, I know you had just said that you had just gotten over an illness, but you want to make that disclaimer now?
Yeah, sorry. Just to let everybody know, as I said in our last episode, I have been sick, and if my voice is not up to par, that is why. I am feeling much better now. Thank you. But I have been coughing for many days straight, and it has ruined my vocal cords. So if my voice goes in and out, that's why. Just disclaimer there.
So let's kind of really get into Finding Dory. So, like I said, this is a Dory movie. And like much like the original film where we start with Marlin and his widow and their children who unfortunately, yeah, you saw the first movie, you know what I'm talking about. We see the world from Dory, baby Dory.
Baby
This,
Dory is so adorable.
yeah. There was some. I mean, this is one of the first complaints I've heard from the movie. So Dory's a blue tang, and that was one of the things coming out of the movie is that blue tangs tend not to breed in captivity, and Dory is born in captivity. I know it's a cartoon; it shouldn't matter, but that seemed to have been one of the critiques of the movie when it came out.
Well, I mean, we don't really know how long that she'd been in there. She doesn't really remember, and they might have been kind of scooped up together as a family. I mean, we don't really know. We just see her as a young fish, and that could have literally been their first day in there.
Possible. I will say I kind of like the design of Dory's dad because they somehow found a way to give a fish a receding hairline because of the way his Dory's dad is shaped. I mean, it's like his fin is further back than the other blue tangs. His black mark is further back. His head is very dome shaped. So I kind of like that they found a way to give a fish a receding hairline.
It is adorable, and I love the all of the designs in this movie.
Mm.
Also, her dad, Charlie, Eugene Levy as the voice, wonderful. And of course, Jenny, the mom, is Diane Keaton. Again, wonderful portrayal here.
A lot of comedy legends in this movie.
Yeah, I mean, one of the main characters in this is Ed O'Neill.
Yeah. So you have Ed O'Neill, you have Eugene Levy, Diane Keaton, and of course Albert Brooks back as Marlin.
Yeah, but I mean, you get Ty Burrell, and you get Bill Hader, and you get Kate McKinnon, and I mean, of course, we have John Ratzenberger is in here because it's a Pixar film. We get a bunch of like really cool, just like oh my goodness, why are they in here? Idris Elba. Why is Idris Elba in here? But he's amazing. Sigourney Weaver as herself.
Yep.
Hi, I'm Sigourney Weaver. Um,
We do get a minor recasting. So
yes, sadly.
well, hold on. He just grew up. Alexander Gould, who played Nemo in the first movie, doesn't sound like a child anymore because he's an adult, because it had been like a decade since the first movie came out. So Nemo gets recasted. Hayden Roylance is young Nemo. However, Alexander Gould does have a part in the movie. He is one of the truck drivers at the end of the movie.
I thought you were talking about Jacques at the end of the movie, because the little shrimp from the tank in the first movie, because he had to be recast due to the fact that the original voice actor Joe Ranft passed away, but his brother took over the part in this one.
Yeah.
And so that's who I thought you were talking about. Sorry.
No, it's fine. So, I mean, yeah. This opening with Baby Dory just lost. You know, she accidentally ended up getting sucked out of a pipe out of the aquarium, out of the Fish Institute, and is just trying to find her family. And again, she has the short-term memory loss, so she doesn't know where she's going. She doesn't, and it's kind of sad as you see Dory grow up, essentially alone, as she tries to find friends, and some try to help her, but she doesn't remember the details. Others are just ignoring her.
Yeah, I mean, we do see that couple at the beginning that are like, "Oh no, it's a child," and then they like turn around to talk to each other, and then she's gone. But we do kind of see how she ended up migrating to where she eventually meets Marlin.
From California all the way to basically Australia, since that was the first movie, almost.
Well, I mean, remember they had to travel quite a long way to get to Australia.
Yeah.
It is sad because at the beginning of the movie, Baby Dory does kind of express the fear of, what if I forget you, Mom and Dad? And what if you forget me? And part of that comes true. She forgets them for a while.
Yeah, she says, "I'm looking for my mom and dad. I'm looking for my mom and dad. I'm looking for someone. I'm looking for someone. What am I doing here?"
Yeah, I mean, she loses it over time. On the other hand, we see that they did not forget her. What they tell her at the beginning of the movie, you know, that like, you won't really forget us because the memories are still there, but also that they won't forget her. Speaking of kind of like, you know, skipping ahead, but one of the most relatable parts of the movie to me personally is during kind of Hank and Dory's breakout, you know, when they're in the baby carriage.
Mm-hmm.
And he says, "Okay, we need to find open ocean, and you have to be the navigator."
And I do like that they use Dory's ability to read.
Yeah, that she does have the ability to read, yeah. Brought back from the first movie. But she says, "Okay, I'm going to repeat it over and over to myself so that I don't forget." And she says over and over, "We've got to get to open ocean. We've got open ocean. We've got to get to open ocean. We're looking for open ocean." Okay? And you see the whole thing in the, you know, there's a whole sequence of her repeating it over and over. And as long as she's repeating it, she can navigate. Open ocean, go left. Open ocean, go right. open ocean, straight ahead, you know? But then Hank says, oh, and make sure that we don't run into any kids, and remember this and remember that, and he distracts her, and then her brain forgets it and skips. And then she sees something that triggers a different memory, and she says, world's biggest classes, world's biggest class. Okay, we're going to world's biggest classes. And she starts navigating them in a different direction. And that is one of the most relatable parts of the movie to me because, one, I do use that tactic. Especially if I'm like alone in my house and I'm doing a task. I repeat to myself, what is the task I'm doing right now? You know? I am doing laundry, or I am washing dishes, or I am, whatever the thing is, to make sure that I am focused on the task I'm doing. I'm not getting distracted. The problem comes in is if somebody else interrupts that. If I get a phone call, or if my dog barks and I have to go check on what he's barking at, because then my brain will skip. I will see something else. If I'm doing laundry and the dog barks and I have to go check on him, and I might walk through the kitchen to do that, and I see dirty dishes and I go, oh, I need to do dishes. And I forget that I was doing laundry. And then the laundry doesn't get done,
Mm.
And so watching that portrayed so realistically in a movie, even though it's a movie about a cartoon fish, it's that, she has a clear instruction. She has a coping mechanism to get around her disability. If you respect that and you let her do it, she can get you where you need to go. And then Hank starts throwing all kinds of other verbal directions at her. And she gets confused. And I've never seen a more realistic portrayal of what my brain is like in those situations than this movie. And it was incredible to watch. So watching through the course of the movie, and especially at the beginning of the movie when her parents are trying to give her these tricks, and then watching it degrade over the course of the movie as she grows up. And that this can't be that long of a time because fish lifespan,
Mm.
But, in her personal timeline, it's been a long time. That she goes around, I'm looking for my parents, I'm looking for my parents. And then as other characters interact with her and they feed her different information, they ask her different questions, they lead her in different directions, she gets pulled from that singular focus. And then it becomes, I remember I'm looking for someone. And then it becomes, I remember I had a purpose, but I don't know what that was. And it's such a bizarrely realistic portrayal of what that mindset is like. To see it portrayed in a freaking Pixar movie about fish was just, it really hit me in the theater. I had all kinds of emotions
It's not a
watching this
Pixar
movie.
movie unless it makes you cry.
It wasn't that it just made me cry. It made me feel seen to a weird degree.
That phrase, representation matters, isn't just about gender or skin color. It's also about a disability. And for you, you were seen through Dory and what she went through in this movie.
Yeah.
I just want to know, was that bit of the first movie recreating Marlin and Dory's meeting, was that recycled audio from the first movie, or did they re-record that? I know it doesn't matter.
I don't know.
See, I know
But I wondered that too.
I know it doesn't matter, but that just, I wonder about that. Was that reused, or did they re-record that?
I mean, I'm sure somebody could tell us, but I'm not the person.
Yeah. Yes, this is Dory's movie, but there is a bit of growth in Marlin. Like, Marlin's growth in the first movie was learning to trust his son and not being such an overprotective parent. This is also Marlin learning to trust Dory. And even though Dory has a disability, that doesn't mean she's helpless. Because he's worrying about her. He's making sure she's trying to get her out of danger. She worried if she wanders off and whatnot. And when Nemo accidentally gets knocked over by Dory's zooming, and he kind of tells her, you've done enough. Go in the corner and forget that's what you're good at. Despite him seeing Dory as a good friend, even by this point, he still kind of sees her as a burden. And interestingly enough, that's what she remembers. Because she repeats it later in the movie. Go in the corner, Dory, and forget it's what you're good at. I had forgotten that gets come back later in the movie. And that says a lot. For someone with memory issues to remember the negativity of people that you care about.
I mean, to be honest, that's also a really decent portrayal. Because sometimes those are the things that stick with you. The things that stick with you are the more emotional things. You know how you said that she needs a trigger for certain things?
Mm-hmm.
My memories tend to be triggered by things like objects or smells.
Mm-hmm.
But the things I remember very, very clearly are things that have strong emotions attached. So the fact that he hurt her so badly that she remembers his exact words is not at all shocking to me.
And also, it's like, Marlin is still Marlin. Like, hey, we had our adventure. The purpose of going on an adventure is that you don't go on another one. But it's like, but they're my family. I miss them. I forgot them, and now I remember them, and now I miss them. Please help me.
I mean, it's not it is a big ask, but it's not an out there ask. Because Dory immediately helped Marlin the second she met him. I saw a boat. Let's go get your son.
Yeah. No questions asked. It was just, oh, your son's been kidnapped. I will help you find your son. And, it leads to the phrase in this movie, what would Dory do? Dory doesn't come up with a plan. Dory just does it. I mean, that's not true. She does come up with a few plans in this movie, and they work out. But from Marlin's perspective, Dory never thinks of the consequences. when she's doing something, not in a negative way. It's like, I need to do, person is in trouble, I need to help them, I am going to do this to help them, and if I get hurt, it's okay. For Marlon is, I need to do thing to help somebody, I don't want to get hurt.
Well, here's the one thing I will say. I think this is the one thing that the movie stumbles on a little bit, because I think what they're trying to say is a very good moral. However, I think they stumbled a little bit on the execution because, okay, so there's a thing I don't know how many people noticed. If you just watch the movie casually, but basically every character in this movie is disabled in some form. As at least as far as like the major characters we follow.
I mean, obviously there's Nemo with the fin.
Nemo with the fin, and Dory, of course, with her memory problems. But even the new characters we meet. Okay, Hank is a septopus, not an octopus. He has lost a tentacle. Okay? Destiny is nearsighted, and she bumps into everything. And I love the little squeaky toy noise whenever she bumps into anything. Can I point out that that is the greatest invention of sound effects thing since the Wilhelm scream? Like, yes, squeaky toy, whale, bonk noise, yes. The beluga whale, whose name I'm forgetting,
Bailey.
Bailey. He has trouble accessing his echolocation for most of the movie. Okay? He does get over that, but the thing is that the thing most people I don't think realize about Marlon is that Marlon, you can also say, does have a disability. He has extreme anxiety. And you could even say perhaps what we would call agoraphobia in a human.
Also, a bit of PTSD.
I mean, yeah, you could say that's PTSD, causing that, But
I mean, he almost died, saw his wife die, saw 99 of his children die.
almost died several times trying to get Nemo back. I mean, he's been through a lot of trauma.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that this is bad on Marlon's part. I understand where Marlon's coming from. But I think that the moral of the story that they're trying to get across in the most generous reading of this film is that Marlon does not act because of his anxiety, and Dory, possibly because of the short-term memory loss, does not have all that anxiety and does not quite consider the consequences all the time. So she acts just because somebody's in trouble, somebody needs help. Whereas Marlon sees somebody in trouble and he does want to help and he does help, but it takes him longer to act because he is filled with anxiety. So I think the idea of what would Dory do is, in the most generous reading, the idea of try not to let the anxiety, Marlon, overwhelm your need to act in this situation.
Yes, I mean, it's probably not the best way to say it. Control your anxiety. Don't let your anxiety control you.
Yeah, I mean, what there are probably better ways to put that, although I can't think of one at the moment. But the thing, like, when they first come up with the what would Dory do? Marlon and Nemo are stuck in this tank and they see the little splash pool thing with the fountain. Now, Is that the greatest idea? No. Does it almost get them killed? Yes. But literally, what is the other option? If you sit there and think about it, there's not another option. You either do that thing or you sit in that tank. The thing is that Dory just acts more quickly because she goes, oh look, only option, might as well do it. Whereas Marlin is like, yes, I realize this is the only option, but I'm too scared to take it until somebody pushes me to do it. Whether it is Dory or Nemo. And Marlin has to learn to be his own impetus in that. Like, yes, you're only left with one other option. It's a stupid option, but literally the only path.
Yeah, and you know, they even say it to her. You know, how did you guys get here? Well, we just thought, what would Dory do? And that sticks with her as well. What would Dory do? What would Dory do? What would I do? What would I do?
Speaking of Marlin and things he does, I mentioned to you off mic that I love they're helping Dory get to California. They run across a giant squid, and
Yeah.
Marlin immediately treats the giant squid like Cthulhu. He's like, hey, if you don't eat us, we will worship you and build a monument in your honor. And I'm like, the heck, my dude? Like, what is this about?
I think he's just saying anything to try and get them out of that situation.
Well, yeah, but this is literally the only time we see Marlin, like, negotiate with a creature on this kind of level. Like, he's always like, hey, if you let us go, we'll give you information, or or you don't want to eat us, we're poisonous, or, like, he does something else that is kind of in the realm of normal. And then all of a sudden they meet giant squid, and he is like, I Cthulhu Fhtagn, what is going on here?
I mean,
I love the kind of, I don't know if that's like an intentional reference, but it kind of seems like it has to be, because it is so out of left field. When it happens, I'm like, why is Marlin suddenly meeting another sea creature and is like, I will worship you as a god, just don't eat me? Because he does not do that with sharks.
I don't know. I think it was just a random thing. I don't know. But
I really hope that it was like, they were just like, what does he do if he meets the giant squid? Like, well, he thinks it's Cthulhu and they've wakened it from its slumber, so he starts a cult to it. Like, it's like...
I want to talk about Becky Uru. I think this would also be in the disabled because she's got a ruffled up feathers. Her neck's a bit cranked up.
Oh yeah. I mean, Becky totally counts.
Yeah. So how they tell that you have to imprint on her to get her to do something. So because you see other loons behind her, and their feathers are prim and they're acting like regular old fowls, and this one is kind of not. But apparently, if you imprint on Becky, she'll do whatever you want. This is another Marlin thing because, again, yes, he has to imprint on Becky, but also it's Marlin falling into those old routines of not trusting the process. Like, he kind of doesn't trust Nemo, and that is kind of what ends up getting him captured. Doesn't really trust Dory, and they end up getting separated, even in the original movie. And doesn't trust Becky to get them where they need to go, so he ditches her, and which is what they end up how they end up in the tank. But as soon as she's done eating the popcorn that Dory had knocked over just moments ago, she picks up the pail and gets them where they would have gone if they had just stayed put.
Come on, she's really tired after that. She needs to stop for a snack.
Yeah. But, like I said, it plays up into Marlin just not being as trusting. Now, it could be his own anxieties and whatnot, or he could just be a jerk. Because at least in this movie, he at least acknowledges that he's been a jerk to a lot of people in this movie. I really like the use of Hank's cloaking, his little
his camouflage.
Yeah, that's the word I was looking for. How he can disguise himself, and the fact that does get played up in the movie a lot, to the point that it's a gag in the end credits.
The end credits to this are so fun.
Yeah. I wish that they had kind of committed to the bit in the end credits by having, like, for example, kids in the audience look for Hank. Where's he hiding? But they kind of give up on that halfway through the credits.
Yeah. Let's talk about Hank, because Hank is also suffering from some PTSD and some anxiety here, as well as his missing tentacle.
The institute, the aquarium that they're all at, that this movie takes place in, has a saying, rescue, rehabilitate, release. So they will find fish and aquatic animals in the wild that are either injured or sickly or what have you, take them to their facility, heal them up, and then re-release them back into the wild. And that is the point where Hank is at. Hank is at the release portion of his stay at the Institute, and he does not want to go. He does not want to go back into the wild. He wants to go to Cleveland. Several of the aquatic life at the Institute. This is a public aquarium where people will see various aquatic species. So they are sending some of the aquatic life to a facility in Cleveland, either another institute or another aquarium. It's never said. It's just said Cleveland. Part of that is all of the blue tangs. The entire blue tang exhibit is getting transferred to Cleveland, and that's where Hank wants to go because he does not want to go back into the wild. That's why he eventually gets he wants Dory's tag, because any aquatic life with that tag will be going to Cleveland. We don't know why. It could be because of his missing tentacle. It could just be he's kind of used to the captivity lifestyle.
He says he doesn't have good memories of being in the ocean. So I wonder if, he lost his tentacle in some, thing that happened in the ocean, and then he was rescued and he was like, hey, this is kind of cushy.
It's possible he lost it to a predator of some kind.
Yeah. The interesting thing is that they have this whole thing about he has 7 tentacles and he lost a tentacle, and it's a whole sad backstory and whatever. But what's so funny is the real reason is that the animators couldn't figure out how to fit 8 tentacles onto the character and have it look not awful. Not even joking. That is apparently the for real backstory. Is when they were trying to animate the octopus, they could not figure out a way to get that 8th tentacle to work correctly. And so they were like, well, why don't we just come up with a backstory that he lost a tentacle and he's, upset about it or whatever.
There's also another thing, is that when we first meet Hank, he's slinking around. You don't really see the missing tentacle. He slides into the sink, and he thinks he's turning on the light switch, but he turns on the garbage disposal. In my head canon, that's how he lost the tentacle. Just
Well,
right then and there.
uh,
That's my head canon. I'll take it.
I mean, I will let you have your headcanon. The funny thing is that I really liked Hank when I first saw this movie, because if you know anything about octopuses in captivity, and yes, that is the correct plural, it is not octopi, it is octopuses, or, also acceptable, octopodes. It is a Greek root, not a Latin root. Thank you. This has been a friendly thing from your local linguist. Octopuses. Octopuses is the plural. But if you know anything about octopuses in captivity, they are hilariously bastards at being escape artists. They are really, really funny. In the sense of that they will escape basically anything. In fact, there is one point where, if you know anything about octopuses, you know that either the screenwriter did not do their research, or that Hank is lying to Dory, because there is a point in the movie where Dory says, "Hank, you have to come with me through the pipe," and he says, "I can't fit." Now, if you're like a tiny child or whatever, or you don't know anything about octopus anatomy, that seems fine. Here's the thing, though. The only part of an octopus that is rigid is their beak. And usually their beak is no bigger than like maybe a quarter. Okay? Like the size of a US quarter. So any opening that size or larger, an entire octopus can fit through. Because the only thing that they have to fit through is their beak, and the rest of their body is completely flexible.
I think it's just Hank being a jerk.
So I always saw that as Hank lying to Dory, because if Dory can fit through it, Hank can fit through it. Because blue tangs are, if you've ever seen a blue tang in person, they are much larger than the beak of an octopus Hank's size. He is, like I said, either they didn't do their research, which I find very weird, because basically most of the marine biology in these movies is really heavily researched. So I am absolutely certain that this was meant to be Hank lying to Dory's face.
Like, he doesn't really want to help her. He says, I just want the tag. I don't care about anything else.
I want to go to Cleveland. The only creature in the history of ever that has wanted to go to Cleveland.
Maybe he wants to go to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
I mean, it's a reason to visit Cleveland, not live in Cleveland.
Yeah.
I do respect that he wants to just, like, live in a tank alone and have everybody, like, leave him be.
Yeah, because the fear in Hank when they end up in basically the petting zoo.
Yeah.
No, people will touch me, no.
Not just people, kids.
Yeah, and the other fish in that petting zoo is like, no, hands, no, Hank, I'm looking for Hank, hands. And then they get to, like, what did they call it? The poking center or whatever it was, where the kids
the poke alley or whatever.
Yeah, poke alley. Yeah, that's it. Where the kids are just poking the fish, and it's like, oh, those poor little fish.
And
One
then
thing,
he inks on everything, and Dory says it's okay, everybody does it. Which I thought was adorable.
I mean, not the first squid to ink in one of these movies. You guys made me ink.
Yeah.
I do like that Bailey's injury is still present when he gets his echolocation back because it's fuzzy.
Yeah.
Like he starts using his echolocation to help Dory out through the pipes, and it's like an old fuzzy television. It's like he can't make out. He makes out general shapes, but he doesn't know any specifics because he still has his injury.
Well, and he mistakes Marlin and Nemo swimming together for a giant predator fish. Because all he senses is a mass swimming towards Dory.
Also, the origin of Dory learning how to speak whale because she was pipe pals with Destiny.
Yeah. I still can't get over the little squeaky toy noise. Sorry.
Yeah.
It's one of the most adorable things in the movie. Other adorable things in the movie, and I know I mentioned it in the first movie, but it still continues to amaze me. The fact that they constantly have the fish, when they have to communicate with other creatures above water. So like when Marlin and Nemo are talking to the sea lions, there will be a moment where one of them will duck underwater to catch their breath and then come back up and continue the conversation. And it's not made like a big deal of. It's just a short moment in the animation, like while another character is talking, that one of them will dip under the water for a second and then pop back up. And it's very obviously like, I have run out of breath and I need to go get my breath. And they did that in the first movie too. But it's so subtle in this movie and I love it. I love it so much. It's the tiny little details that I like. So can we talk about Gerald for a second?
Yeah, so we have Fluke, Rudder, and Gerald. Fluke and Rudder are just these two sea lions that sit on this rock all day, and Gerald just wants to sit on the rock too.
Yeah, Idris Elba and Dominic West as Fluke and Rudder. Gerald doesn't really get any voice.
This just sounds.
Yeah, but it is Torben Sandbullock, in case you wanted to know. But yeah, Gerald also seems to have some sort of disability, and we will not speculate on what that is.
They treat Gerald so badly in this movie. It's like, hey, Gerald, you can give us your bucket and we'll let you sit on a rock for 5 seconds. Then it's off.
Yeah, this is the part of that is playing on the mine from the
which also
first
does
movie.
come back in this movie.
Yeah, we do see it for a couple of seconds as the seagull flock does fly overhead, and you can hear them flying overhead going mine. But this is kind of their attempt to do that again with the sea lions barking off to Gerald. Poor Gerald.
Yeah. I mean, even when the other two sea lions go with Dory and Destiny and Bailey and after the truck, it's like, don't get used to it, Gerald. they're not going to help. They're just going to see what happens. Like, I gotta see this.
Yeah, they're just looky-loos.
3 words: otter cuddle party.
Oh man, the otters are so adorable.
Mm-hmm. they have the otters in the institute, and then there's the otters outside and stopping traffic with the cuddle party. And it's like almost cause a car accident. If this was a different studio, it would have been a car accident. But because this is Disney, we can't have that.
Yeah, I mean, it just stops traffic.
Yeah. And then they go out and say, oh, they're so cute. Okay. I know we're kind of skipping ahead here, but I want to say this right now. You're these two truck drivers who are going to be delivering these fish either to the airport. I doubt you're driving all the way to Cleveland from California. But how are you going to explain to your boss that you got carjacked by an octopus?
We are so fired, dude.
That makes this movie epic. That makes this movie just like, this is the greatest. I mean, I remember when I saw this in the theater, an octopus just carjacked this van. This is the greatest movie of all time.
Yeah, it is really, really just bunker doodles how the truck ends up.
Like, the final 15 minutes of this movie, the writers were just saying, screw it, we are going to go completely bonkers in this movie.
Yeah, it's because the thing is that Dory has already found her parents. She got swept away in the pipe, and then her parents followed to try to find her. And when they couldn't find her, they stayed put and left just all these trails of shells, which was so sweet. I cried at that part in the movie when I first saw it.
Yeah.
All the trails that they had been setting out the entire time she was gone, in every direction, just to be like, here we are. But then she's found her birth family, but her chosen family is in danger.
Yeah, they're stuck in the truck on the way to Cleveland.
And nobody wants to go to Cleveland. So they need to, they need to go rescue them. And her parents are begging her to stay. And she's like, no, I will. I have to go do this.
They're my family, too.
Yeah.
She specifically says, they're my family.
In doing that, she ends up releasing all of these various aquatic creatures into the ocean again.
They seem to be all cool with it because they're chanting, release, release, release.
Yeah. Which, for anybody who's seen Logan's Run, it had a really big renew thing for me when I first saw it. I was like, oh no, this is gonna be bad. I'm glad all of those fish missed that rock.
But all of these fish being released into the California Ocean, we're not going to think about that. It's a cartoon.
Yeah.
But just the gag of the little fish being eaten by the larger fish, being eaten by the larger fish. It's a nice play on that gag because it's not the first time we've seen that gag, even in a Disney film. But the bigger fish gagging and spitting out the other two fish.
Yeah. Well, no, because he sneezes, because it's the fish that's been sneezing the whole time.
Oh, yeah. And they just release it into the freaking wild.
Yeah.
Again, greatest movie of all time. Octopus carjacks this van and drives it off a cliff. And luckily, again, probably because this is a Disney movie, none of them got crushed by the van. And granted, it's Hank that grabs Dory and then grabs everyone else as soon as he hits the water to not get hit by the van as it hits the water.
Yeah.
The fact that they play Wonderful World on top of all of that.
Yeah.
Greatest movie of all time.
It is a very funny moment when they like hit that ramp off of the cliff kind of moment, and just they hit like kind of 0 G as they kind of start to fall, and it kicks in with What a Wonderful World. But yeah,
And the Sigourney Weaver narration at the end.
yeah. Yeah, the thing is I kind of think it's funny that we're in California. You know, they've traveled from the Great Barrier Reef to California to get reunited with Dory's family. They release all of the fish and everything, and then most of them, not all of them, of course, but like most of the characters we've been following make the entire journey from California back to the Great Barrier Reef to live. And I find it interesting that like we just kind of skip that. Like she's like, "Hey Hank, come with me into the ocean and live with me and my friends." And then there's a moment that we did not see where they have to explain to Hank like, "You can live here on your own in the open ocean, or you can come with us to the Great Barrier Reef, but you have to cross like an insane amount of ocean."
Hold on to this turtle. You're going for a ride.
Yeah, it's like,
I mean, they had 2 whales. They could have made the trip. They could have, they could have rode on.
well, yeah, but I mean, it's still a long journey.
Yeah.
It's like, do you want to get there by, cruise ship, or do you want to get there by airplane? It's still a long journey. You still got to cross an ocean.
But yeah, they're all in the Great Barrier Reef. They're all living together. They're all friends. Yay. And Marlin starts to trust Dory's judgment, and like much like the first movie where he's learning not to be as protective of Nemo, he's now learning not to be as protective of Dory. Just because Dory does have a disability does not mean she's helpless.
The thing is that at the beginning of the movie, it's like Dory has support needs, yes, but her support needs are treated as like a nuisance by the people in her life. Not her parents and stuff. I'm talking about like with Marlin and Nemo and the Stingray teacher and stuff, when they're like, Mr. Ray, he's got a lot to do today. Maybe you need to, the way that Marlin is kind of infantilizing her at the beginning of the movie. At the end of the movie, it's like they understand she has support needs, but she's allowed to be more independent.
And I like that, she, like at the beginning of the movie, she wants to go to that cliff that they had at the beginning of the first movie, because she just likes the view, and Marlin's saying, no, don't go here. The last time we were here, we ended up in Australia. Let's not go here anymore. And she just likes to sit there and enjoy the view. And she gets to do that at the end of the movie with Marlin. The fact that the last line in this movie, officially, is Dory calling the view unforgettable, followed by a cover of the song Unforgettable. It's a little much, but I get it.
Yeah, it's a bit schmaltzy, but yeah. The rest of the movie is so good, we'll forgive them that,
Yeah. But this movie has a post-credit scene, and we end up back at the Institute in California. We're seeing our sea lions back on their rock, and you kind of mentioned it earlier, but yeah, we get our aquarium crew from the first movie. Still in their bags. It's filthy in there. So apparently they have been in these bags for the last year, making their way from Sydney, Australia, all the way to California. And they are picked up and put in the institute. Now what?
But Gerald does get his the last laugh because the other two sea lions fall asleep on the rock, and Gerald sneaks onto the rock and just sits there while they sleep.
I remember laughing when that post-credit scene came on, because so like that would mean that they got Willem Dafoe to come into the studio to record like 3 lines of this for this entire movie just for this post-credit scene.
Yep.
That perfect. But I do remember laughing my butt off. Hearing Willem Dafoe's voice, seeing the aquarium gang, the tank gang, in having their like, hey, they're out and they're going to get out of their bags and they're going to be in this institute until they are ready to be released. And yeah, oh man, fine. This movie is still good. This movie is good.
Yeah, do we even need to ask the question?
I mean, we will. Does this movie have the magic? Absolutely.
Yes.
I mean, coming from the question of, do we need a Dory movie? Do we need a sequel to Finding Nemo? Did we need a sequel to Finding Nemo? I don't think we did, but this movie more than justifies being a sequel. It does enough new that it justifies existing. There are sequels that just exist to make money. It feels like they had a great story for this movie, that it's not retreading too much of the original film. And yeah, it is focusing on a side character from the first movie, but everything that most people dislike about Cars 2, which focused on Mater, they learned from their mistakes and did it right with Finding Dory.
I still say that this is, I mean, not only is it just a good movie, I just think it holds up as a movie.
Mm-hmm.
I still think this is one of the best representations of this particular sort of disability that I've ever personally seen. Mm-hmm. And like I said, I felt seen. I have a lot in common with Dory from a disability standpoint. Not necessarily a personality standpoint, but from a disability standpoint, the way a lot of things are portrayed as the way her brain works or doesn't work in some cases, and the way other people treat her resonates a lot with me. And this movie really hit me more than the original Finding Nemo. I mean, I think if you're a parent, Finding Nemo hits in like a very specific way. But for me, this is the better of the two movies. I know it sounds weird, but it's because it's very personal and specific to me. And I know it's not like that for everyone. But if you want like just a tiny glimpse into my world, this movie is a good start for a teeny tiny sliver of it.
Go see it if you haven't seen it in a while or never seen it. It's well worth the watch. As for next week, well, it's time to go back down that yellow brick road. We are off to see the Wizard origin story, because there's a Wizard of Oz prequel that's coming out in theaters, and we are going to see Disney's attempt at a Wizard of Oz prequel because they couldn't get the rights to the Broadway show. So next week, Oz the Great and Powerful We are going to see the origin story of the Wizard of Oz.
I'm super looking forward to it.
Will this defy gravity? Will this be popular? I don't know. So come back next week as we discuss Oz, the great and powerful, and we will talk to you all next time. Bye.
Bye.
Don't let the magic stop here. Join our conversations on Facebook, Instagram, and Threads at Rewatching the Magic. And new episodes are available every week at rewatchingthemagic.podbean.com. Remember, the magic is for everyone. It only stops if you let it. We encourage you to get involved. Here are some organizations we support.
The American Civil Liberties Union fights for the constitutional rights of all Americans. Find them at aclu.org.
The National Network of Abortion Funds helps people find access to safe abortion services. Their site is abortionfunds.org.
The Trevor Project provides a 24/7 crisis helpline for LGBTQ youth and education services for schools on LGBTQ issues. They can be found at thetrevorproject.org.
Or find a way to help in your area.